Hello and welcome to my live tarot Q&A. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat tarot with you and answer all your burning tarot questions. So I want to give you a moment to get settled, say hello in the chat room, introduce yourself. Hello, Sophie. So far, there's only a few people here. So I guess I'll start by introducing myself. So my name is Kate. I'm also known as the Daily Tarot Girl, and I have been reading tarot for well over 10 years now. I haven't been reading professionally as long. I think it's maybe been 8 years, but I've been passionate about tarot for a really long time. And I loved tarot so much that I started my own tarot website. So it's called dailytarotgirl.com. And I created that website as basically a resource for people who are wanting to learn tarot and wanting to really establish a fun relationship with their tarot cards. So I'm super passionate about tarot, and not only do I read tarot, but I also teach tarot. So I'm a tarot teacher, and it's a topic that I'm really passionate about. And one of my favorite things is answering people's questions about tarot. So I'm really excited to be here with you today and answer all your juicy tarot questions. So hello, Maria. Hello, Kitty from Australia, and Laura S. Hello, and Maria, you're in Holland. Hello, Angelic Michelle, and E-Bug, hi. Hello, Joe. Oh, welcome everyone. All right, so we have a small group today, which is fine. Sometimes I like kind of intimate gatherings more than big groups. So, okay, so I've introduced myself, and I want to ask you, what do you love most about tarot? What is your favorite thing about tarot? And I'll answer my own question because for me, I guess I was originally drawn to tarot because the tarot cards seemed so mysterious and otherworldly. And that was kind of what initially drew me in. And I loved the artwork and the different styles of art in different tarot decks. But the thing that keeps me obsessed with tarot is how tarot has so many layers to it. It's kind of like an onion. You think that you've mastered it, and then you realize that you haven't. That it's one of those kind of unmasterable skills. There's so many complexities and different depths and layers to tarot, and I think that's what keeps me totally obsessed with it. All right, hello Cassandra from Illinois. Lizmila from Toronto. Hello, I'm in Canada too, Lizmila. I'm on the West Coast, Vancouver area. Hello, Lucy. Jean. So Jean, you said you love the illustrations and the story behind it. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people love about tarot is the storytelling aspect to it. Yeah, I think that fascinates a lot of us. And E-Bug, you said tarot helped you so much with clarity and insight, and it helps you find yourself. That's really cool. I agree. When I discovered tarot, it was a time in my life where I was doing a lot of like self-exploration and asking the big existential questions, and tarot really helped me with that as well. So Joe, you said you love how the cards speak to you. And Sharon, welcome Sharon, and welcome Bianca. Bianca. So Bianca says, which tarot deck do you recommend? This is such a, I get asked this question a lot, and it really depends. So if you're an absolute beginner and you want to learn tarot, so you want a deck to learn on, I always recommend getting the Rider-Waite tarot. And I actually, I'm not in my office, I'm down in my foster cat room right now, so I don't have it on hand. But the Rider-Waite tarot, and there's different versions of the Rider-Waite. You can get Radiant Rider-Waite. The one I have is called the Universal Waite. I think you can get a giant Rider-Waite, which is like big cards, which I've always wanted to get. But I recommend that deck because it's simple, It's the easiest deck to learn on, and most other tarot decks are kind of based on that deck. So if you can learn on that deck, then you can pretty much read almost any deck after that for the most part. So that's what I recommend. If you look at the Rider-Waite deck and you think, oh, I don't like it, I don't, resonate with the artwork or whatever, another deck that I would recommend is the Everyday Witch Tarot, which I do have on hand. Card backs look like this. I think you can get this from Amazon. It's a pretty, I think Llewellyn publishes it. It's pretty easy to come by. It's called the Everyday Witch Tarot by Deborah Blake, and I highly recommend that deck. All right. Okay, I'm just gonna read through everyone's comments here. Okay. Yeah, Sophie, you said you feel like tarot is a lifelong topic of learning. Yeah, I totally, I totally agree with that. All right. So I want to open the floor to questions because this is a tarot Q&A. So I would love to answer your questions. So whether your questions are about learning tarot, whether it's about giving people readings, whether it's about starting a tarot business, um, developing your psychic skills, your intuition, whatever it is, I'm open to any questions. So I want to just open it up for anyone who has any random questions for me. So eBuggy said, I want to learn to read for other people, but I am scared of a couple of things. I want to ask and talk about it, but I don't want to sound negative or make anyone uncomfortable with my question. Okay. Maybe elaborate. Let me know what your question is, what it is that you're worried about, because I'm not sure if I totally understand what you're asking. Um, okay, so Sophie's question is, Kate, what do you do when you turn over a card and nothing pops into your head? I know the techniques of saying what you see, but what else could you suggest? Okay, so for people who aren't sure what you mean by saying what you see, one of the first things I do when I turn over a card, if I don't get an immediate idea of what that card means, I'll just kind of talk about the card, like what I'm seeing on the card. Like I'll kind of start describing the card, and that kind of buys me some time to allow my intuition to kind of kick in. But this is something that has happened to me many, many times in the past, and it still happens to me quite a bit actually, where I'll be reading for someone, I turn over a card, and I'm not immediately sure how to interpret that card, and sometimes I just can't think of anything, like my mind just kind of goes blank. So there's a few things that you could do. I do most of my readings recorded so the person isn't in front of me. So that's kind of nice. It's a real luxury, I have to admit. And so what I do then is I just pause my recording and I take a couple deep breaths and I just ponder the card until it's clear to me what I want to say. But if you're reading for someone live, you don't have that luxury. So there's a couple of things that you can do. One thing, which some of you might think is kind of a cop-out, but I'm gonna describe it anyway, is you could ask the person you're reading for to have a look at that card and to tell you what aspect of the card they're most drawn to. So for example, let's say you get King of Wands from the Everyday Witch Tarot in a reading, and you're not sure what it means. So you could say to the person you're reading for, have a look at this card. What about this card? Is there anything about this card that stands out to you? And they might say, yeah, the cat. And so that kind of gives you something to focus on in the reading as a symbol. So that's, one possibility. I feel like that's in a way kind of a more advanced technique. And it's not for everyone. Some people don't like asking the person they're reading for to to take part and tell them what they're seeing. I feel like oftentimes when we turn over a card and we're not sure right away what it means, we just need a little bit of time. And so it's okay to take a little bit of time in the reading. You don't have to be blabbing nonstop during a reading. I remember I used to think that I had to constantly be talking during a reading if I was giving a reading. It's okay to just take a deep breath and kind of center yourself. And then notice what is the first thing that your attention is drawn to on that card? And that gives you kind of a sense of direction on what symbol to start with. Um, but there's all different things there's different aspects to a card. So if I'm not immediately sure what a card might mean, I think about the suit that that card is from. Is it a major arcana card? Is it a minor arcana? And if it's a minor arcana, what suit is it from? Is it cups, wands, pentacles, swords? And each suit represents a particular aspect of life. So let's say you're doing a reading and you get the Two of Swords. The Two of Swords is from the suit of swords, and swords has to do with the mind, thought, thinking, intellect. So right away, I know that this is probably something to do with the way this person is thinking about something. So that again kind of gives me a sense of direction of what to go into. And sometimes I might even say, this card is from the suit of swords, and the suit of swords is about the mind, thinking, and even just saying that kind of gives me a little bit of time, and the gears of my intuition, the gears of my mind start to work. And by the time I'm finished babbling about what suit it's from, I have a few insights coming to my mind. So I hope I hope that answered your question, Sophie. I hope that makes sense. Okay. I'm going to read eBug's question. Oh, okay. So eBug says, I worry my reading will affect someone's life if they are not in the right mental stage. Does that make sense? Yes, that totally makes sense. I understand what you're asking here. Okay. So this is something that I've struggled with too, doing readings. So worrying that when you give a reading to someone, if they're not maybe they're really emotionally raw or vulnerable, maybe they've got mental health issues that they're really struggling with, and there can be a worry that the person you're reading for is not going to take your reading with a grain of salt. They're going to take it really, really seriously, or they might misinterpret it and hear what they want to hear, and that it might not have the most positive effect on their lives. So there's a few ways to kind of guard against this. I wouldn't give a reading to someone if I felt like they could be better helped by another kind of professional, you know. So if I feel like someone could be better helped by maybe getting some counseling or something like that, then I would let them know. Um, yeah, it's a tough one. This is a really tricky a tricky situation to be in for sure. Um, and I think that when I give readings, I always frame my readings in the most positive light, and I always try to make my readings as empowering as I can, and also kind of sensing into the person I'm reading for, like, are they up for hearing. Let me think how I'm going to phrase this. um, you can kind of tell when you're reading for someone, you're like, is this someone who I can be kind of blunt with, or am I going to need to sugarcoat things a little bit? Or am I going to need to frame it in a in a really kind of soft sort of way? Um, but yeah, I think to speak to your concern about you're worried that your reading is gonna affect someone's life in a negative way if they're not in the right mental frame of mind. So I have kind of my own ethical guidelines when I'm giving readings. If it's obvious to me that someone is maybe really struggling with their mental health and not in a great kind of mindset, then I'll sort of gently um, refuse to give the reading because you don't have to give someone a reading just because they ask for it. Um, Luckily, I haven't had to. I think there's only maybe been a couple of times where I've had to do that. It doesn't happen that often. But then there's the concern that even if you're reading for someone who's totally in a great frame of mind, there is that worry that you might say something that might have a negative impact on them. And so there's kind of two sides to this. Number one, you want to get really good at giving readings that are empowering and not focusing so much on predicting future events, but giving, suggestions of new ways of looking at things and things to try and things to focus on. And the other side to this too is that as the reader, you're only responsible for your part of the reading. So you're only responsible for, you know, what you say. You're not responsible for what someone does with that information afterwards or how they take the information. So I hope that makes sense. Um, Oh, okay, and then you elaborate, you said you also fear that, for example, maybe someone might ask me if their significant other is cheating and how it might affect them or come after me. But now that I'm typing this, I don't think I should do those types of readings. Yeah, so I don't think I've ever had that question actually, is my partner cheating on me? But when I'm so I think really kind of the answer to both your questions, Ebug, is to get clear on what your reading ethics are going to be, what your rules are going to be for yourself. Um, so I don't give readings. I won't answer questions that are about other people. So if someone asks me, what is my husband up to right now or whatever, um, I feel like that would go against my reader ethics. So I tell people, this reading is for you. This reading is going to focus on you, not other people. Um, so yeah, that's how I get around answering those kinds of questions. Okay, so Bianca asks, how did you start reading for others, like in a business? So it was many years ago, and it was before I had my website, Daily Tarot Girl. And I had another website, and I can't even remember what that website was called. It was so long ago. And I'd been reading tarot kind of as a hobby for a few years. And I had done a couple of tarot parties, and I actually started doing professional readings when I was working as a personal trainer. So I was working as a personal trainer, and it would come up in conversation when we were talking about hobbies and interests, and I would say that I read tarot. And once a client knew that I could read tarot, most of them wanted a reading from me. And so we would schedule it for after their workout session, and then I would give them a reading. And then just kind of word of mouth, I started to get clients. And around that same time, I was thinking about starting an online business. So I started an online tarot reading business. And initially, I wasn't so focused on it being online. It was more just to kind of bring me in-person clients. But then I found that I actually really liked doing the online readings. And so that's kind of how I got started. In the beginning, I wasn't that successful. I didn't have very many clients. I didn't make much money at all. And when I first started with online tarot reading, I think I maybe got like one client a month or something. Like it was really bad. Thankfully, I had another job at that time. But then it just kind of slowly developed over time, and I started my other website, dailytarotgirl.com, and I started focusing more on kind of promoting myself and that kind of a thing. So I hope that kind of answers your question, Bianca. But how I like immediately started reading for other people, um, was with the personal training. That's when I first kind of segued from doing it as a hobby to doing it professionally when I started reading for my personal training clients. All right. Um, so Sharon asks, did your psychic abilities enhance and grow with your experience? Um, I would say mm, yes, for sure. But I felt even when I wasn't experienced with tarot reading, so right around the time that I first started getting into tarot reading, I was also drawn to just intuition development in general. I was drawn to learning things like Reiki, mediumship, meditation, kind of the whole sort of new agey gamut. And I took a course in psychic development, and I have to say my psychic skills were pretty good right off the bat with that course. And and yeah, I think that they've gotten better kind of over the years, definitely with experience and I think just kind of getting out there and practicing different things has definitely improved my psychic ability. So yeah, if you're wanting to if you're finding like your psychic and intuitive abilities aren't that strong right now, definitely, keep trying, keep practicing, keep giving readings, and you'll probably notice that it starts to improve. And I think it helps to take like an experimental kind of playful approach to developing your intuition and to connecting with spirit. Because I think if you're stressing yourself out about it, like if you're giving someone a reading and you're like, oh, I really want to be intuitive, I really want to, be psychic and stuff. I feel like that kind of gets in the way. And one thing I noticed is that when I took this intro class in psychic development, because everyone who was there was just there to kind of have fun and explore and experiment. Um, Most of us were really open, and and a lot of people in the class had some really amazing, like fascinating experiences. And when you're, say, giving a professional tarot reading to someone, sometimes you might feel kind of pressured, and the intuition doesn't flow as readily as if you're in this like classroom kind of experimental environment. So that's something that I noticed about, uh, you know, tapping into intuition and your psychic skills and tapping into spirit is that spirit really responds to you being relaxed and open and in kind of an exploratory kind of fun mode. I hope that makes sense. All right. Let's see. Are psychic and intuition different? Okay, so this is a good question because I kind of use the terms psychic and intuitive uh, I use them interchangeably. And there's a lot of readers that would say that they're two totally different things. I kind of think they're the same thing. I feel like the word psychic has a lot of negative connotations to people. Like, I know when I think of that word psychic, I think of, like Miss Cleo, like the infomercials late at night for the psychic hotlines. Who was the Jackson sister? Was it Latoya Jackson? I think she had a psychic hotline. And it just reminds me of, like in the backs of like Cosmo magazines in the 90s, there'd be like all those ads for the online or not online, but like telephone psychics and stuff like that. And so the word psychic for a lot of people has negative connotations. And I think also if you're claiming to be psychic, a lot of people think that sounds kind of wild. And so then I think people started using the term intuitive because that term sounds softer, intuitive. Like I'm not psychic, I'm intuitive. Like it sounds less threatening, I think. And Yeah, that term sounds less threatening. So I think a lot of readers are more comfortable referring to themselves as intuitive readers rather than a psychic reader. I think the two are kind of the same. I mean, when I think of being intuitive, intuit means to kind of feel into something. And psychic to me sounds almost a little bit harsher, like and almost like you can, see the future and you can know things. Whereas intuition is like, oh, I'm just kind of feeling things out. I'm kind of like picking up on a vibe. But really, I think that they're kind of one and the same. I think they come from the same place. And I've read lots of articles and books that claim that they're very different things. I just don't buy it. For me, it's they're kind of the same kind of a thing. Um, okay. I'm gonna just read and see if there's any more questions here. So did that answer your question, eBug? Oh, okay, so you said, for example, some psychics say they don't need the cards to see things or know things. Oh, okay. Right. So tarot cards are a tool for tapping into your intuition or your psychic abilities. You can still read the tarot without having any of those abilities, though. That's the beauty of tarot. So you don't have to be psychic or intuitive to give a tarot reading. But there's a lot of readers, some readers will use tea leaves, some readers will be palm readers, or they'll use mediumship or whatever. And all of those things are just kind of tools, I think, for tapping into intuition. And so oftentimes, like I could probably do a reading for someone without the cards. I think I would struggle a bit. Um, and I don't know if I could come up with as specific information and advice, but I could certainly still do a reading without my cards. I don't know how good it would be, but okay, so David says, "I'm just learning tarot. Do you measure your performance as how do you yeah, do you measure your performance as a tarot reader? If so, what do you measure and how? Or can you describe the difference between beginner, intermediate, advanced reader?" Oh, okay, interesting. Um, so how do you measure your performance as a tarot reader? I don't know. I don't think there really is a way. Because there's readers who are very knowledgeable about the cards and have a really good way of explaining things in their readings. And then there's readers who may be very intuitive and just give readings that are just, really resonate with the people that they're reading for. Um, so I don't know how you would measure your success as a tarot reader. I don't think there really is a way necessarily. Um, I mean, when you're first learning, I think, it's important to learn all the different cards and familiarize yourself with it. Um, I would measure my own success as a tarot reader, number one, with how comfortable I feel when I'm giving a reading. So if I'm giving a reading and I'm feeling really stressed and I'm really struggling to read the cards, I would say that's not a successful reading. But if I feel at ease and if I feel like I can interpret whatever card comes up to the best of my ability, then I feel like I'm a good reader. Also, I think if you're reading for other people, it does matter how those people respond to your readings. So I think if you're giving readings and 80% of the people you're reading for are saying like, that doesn't make any sense, then maybe you're not the best reader at that point in your reading career. Um, yeah, and so to describe the difference between a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced reader, a beginner would be someone who is just learning and doesn't yet know what all the cards mean. You're still kind of learning the basics of what the cards mean. An intermediate, I would say, has a pretty good grasp of what most of the cards mean. Maybe not every single one of them, but they have a pretty good grasp. And they've done many readings for themselves, maybe even if some readings for others, and they have a pretty good understanding of how to do a basic tarot reading. And then advanced would be someone who has done lots and lots of readings, who has who is really at ease with doing readings and has a great understanding and could answer almost any question you threw at them about tarot. Does that answer your question? And I'm curious for everyone who's watching, do you consider yourself beginner, intermediate, or advanced? I find most people say that they're beginners when in actual fact they're like intermediate readers. And I think that's because tarot is one of those things where you can study it for a long time and still feel like you're a beginner. Like I said in the beginning, like tarot is like an onion. There's like so many layers to it. And most of us never really feel like we truly master it. And so I think that that leads to a lot of people describing themselves as beginners when in actual fact they're more like intermediate readers. Okay. Thanks, Anna. You said you like my lighter hair. Yeah, I thought for summer I would go a little bit blonder. Okay, so D, you said you feel like you're intermediate based on the description I just gave. Okay. Okay. So Bianca, you said you started reading tarot in December, but you've been studying the meanings since May. Okay. And Eba, you said you're a super beginner. Hmm. Haven't you taken my courses though? I recognize your name and I think you've been in some of my courses and I don't think you're a beginner, but maybe I'm getting you mixed up with someone else. Okay. So Sharon asks, how does one protect their energy field from negative energy? Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so when I first started studying things like Reiki and intuition and energy work, there was this emphasis on protecting your energy and protecting your aura. Um, and there was a lot of emphasis on kind of, visualizing your auric field and letting go of negative energy and putting a protective eggshell around you when you did readings, et cetera, et cetera. And it was all very much focused on visualizing things and the energetics of that and doing little rituals and saying, intentions and things like that. And I don't know if that really works or not. What I've noticed when it comes to negative energy, um, paying attention to how you feel and identifying the things that really drain you of energy. So this is kind of off topic a little bit, but I've noticed that sometimes if I spend too much time on social media, reading comment threads and seeing how people treat each other on there, that really sucks the life out of me. And I can feel that it doesn't really necessarily feel like negative energy invading in on my space. It more like feels like my life force energy is being drained out of me. Maybe that's the same thing. I don't know. And I notice too, if I spend too much time, too much screen time, whether it's just working at my laptop, watching TV, whatever, I find that that isn't necessarily negative energy, but it's not exactly life-giving energy, and I feel really drained. And so just kind of noticing some of the things that sap your energy and then, you know, acting on that, putting things into place so that you're not, things that kind of protect you from that. And so, for me, I try not to spend too much time online and I try to do other things away from screens for the most part. In fact, I'm working on a blog post about uh, how technology affects our intuition. I know that's not what you're asking about, Sharon. I know you're thinking about, other people that have negative energy and stuff like that. And I think really it comes down to boundaries and having good boundaries. And as a reader, having a boundary where I I know that it's not my job or my role to fix other people's problems. I can give a reading that is empowering, that is, an authentic reading where I really connected with that person's spirit when I gave that reading. But at the end of the day, it's not my role to fix that person's problem. And I think A lot of times we get affected by what we think of as negative energy when our boundaries are kind of blurry and we think it's our fault or our role to change another person's life. And when we struggle with that, it can feel like we're being kind of engulfed in negative energy. So I don't know if I hope that made sense, Sharon. Yeah, so I think having good boundaries is a good one. Okay. Okay, I'm glad that made sense, Sharon. Oh, okay. May I ask if you do a cleaning on yourself when you feel like you're being drained? Yeah, so okay, so what I do when I'm giving professional readings, and most of the professional readings I give are not face-to-face in-person readings. So someone will email me their questions, and then I do the reading on my own, recording my voice, and then I send them the reading. So it's not live. But this is what I do before and after my professional readings. So before, I like to energetically clear my reading space, I like to clear myself, and I like to clear my tarot deck. And my favorite method for doing that is with sage. So I grow a ton of sage in my garden, and I have a million sage bundles hanging up around my house drying right now. And I take a bundle of sage, I light it, and I waft the sage smoke just around the area that I read in. I always make sure I crack a window because I read somewhere that if you don't, then the negative energy stays in your house. So you have to crack a window to let it escape. So that's what I do. And then I waft the sage smoke over my body and over my cards. And sage has been used for hundreds, if not probably thousands of years by various people as a energetic cleansing tool. And so I don't know for sure if it works, but I feel like it does. And so that's what I do. So if I am feeling drained, that's one thing I'll do. Another thing that works really well is salt baths. So I use Epsom salts. You can also use sea salt, and I'll mix up a big vat of salts, baking soda, essential oils, and then I'll have a hot bath. And I feel like that really cleanses me. And then, of course, I like to do journaling as well. And so if there's something that's really draining me or on my mind, I like to write about it and journal about it. And I feel like that helps me kind of cleanse my mind. So I guess I cleanse myself in a physical sense with the hot bath, an energetic sense with the sage, and then cleanse myself psychologically with the journaling. Okay. Oh, okay. I like this question. This one's from David. Um, how do you define a tarot reader? How do you describe or define your role as a tarot reader? Okay, so first of all, I define a tarot reader as someone who knows and has a very good understanding of the system of tarot. So what the cards mean and all that stuff. So someone who understands that and who gives readings. Because there are some people who will do readings with tarot cards, but they don't actually know what any of the cards mean. They're just kind of going with, you know, the images on the cards. They're kind of making it up a little bit, but they might also be just using the imagery and the symbolism to trigger their intuition. And that's a totally legitimate way to read. There's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of readers that will use tarot cards, and they might call themselves tarot readers, but they actually don't know anything about tarot. I don't think that those people are really tarot readers. I think they are intuitive card readers who happen to be using tarot. So a tarot reader is someone who knows the the system and tradition of tarot inside and out, and does readings. And I think you could call yourself a tarot reader even if you don't read for other people. If you just read for yourself, you're still a tarot reader. Okay. And then there was another part of that question. How do you define your role as a tarot reader? So I think my role as a tarot reader is to interpret the cards that show up to the best of my abilities in the most empowering way that I know. That is my role as a tarot reader. Um, yeah. Okay. Oh, interesting. So Lucy, you said you feel comfortable with the major arcana cards, but not the rest. So the rest of the tarot, the minor arcana cards, are actually, in my opinion, easier to understand than the majors. The majors have a lot going on. The majors are really intense. And I find the majors in some ways can be difficult to really relate to, whereas the minor cards, they depict everyday scenes happening on them, and they can be easier to understand and relate to. So keep that in mind as you continue to learn tarot. That I actually often suggest to people that they start with learning the minor arcana cards first before the majors, just because I do think that they're easier to know and to understand. And the secret to really understanding the minors is to understand the four suits. So, excuse me, in a tarot deck, you've got the pentacles, swords, cups, and wands. And each suit represents a different aspect of life. And so, pentacles is kind of the physical aspect, the body, health, money. Um, Swords is the mind. Cups is the heart, feelings, emotions, relationships, and wands is like spirit and energy and passion. And so once you really kind of understand that, it's a lot easier, I think, to learn and remember the minor arcana cards. Okay. Oh, is a reading better if it's done in person? No, I don't think so. I've done a lot of in-person readings and I've done a lot of distance readings. I personally think my distant readings are better because I'm more relaxed. Um, I feel like I'm in my best tarot reader mode when I'm by myself. Um, but there's pros and cons to both. And there is something really magical, I think, about being in the same room as someone that you're reading for. So I think there's pros and cons to both, but I wouldn't say that one is necessarily better than the other. Like, I don't feel like I can connect to someone's energy better when they're in the room as opposed to if I'm doing a distance reading. If anything, I find being right across from someone kind of distracting, and I tend to get distracted by how they look, what they're wearing, how they're acting, and I'm, like, the most judgmental person in the world, and I always have all these assumptions based on how someone's dressed or how they're sitting. And so that kind of gets in the way. Whereas when I'm doing distance readings, I don't have all that. Oh, okay. So Casey, you say you're struggling with the court cards. The court cards are tricky, and it took me like years before I was comfortable reading them. And there's a few reasons for this. So I think that um, the court cards are hard to read because they all kind of look the same, and there's not a lot of if you look at the major kind of cards and the minor kind of cards, there's things happening on them. There's lots of symbols. With the court cards, I feel like there's usually not a lot happening, and it's easy to get all the knights mixed up or all the queens mixed up, and it's hard to kind of tell them apart. Think of the court cards and I should be plugging my course. I have a course on court cards on my website. Hold on, I'm gonna put the link um, in the chat here. So yeah, I have a course on court cards, but I'm gonna tell you um, some secrets about learning the court cards here. Okay, so I'm going to put the link to my course in the chat. All right. So some secrets to learning the court cards. Think of the court cards as people, as characters. And the court cards represent the suit. So let me describe this better. So there's 4 court cards for each suit. There's a king, queen, knight, and a page. Think of the court cards as like a family. Think of like the king is like the dad, queen is like the mom, and then the page is the youngest. They're like a student, they're learning. The knight is like a youngish person, like maybe someone in their 20s or 30s who's really adventurous. Um, so thinking of them in those terms, and then each suit has 4 court cards, and the suit determines kind of the energy of the court cards. So let's say we're looking at the Page of Cups. So the page is young, student. Suit of Cups is about feelings, emotions, relationships. Page of Cups is someone who is learning about relationships, how to act in relationships, how to process their feelings, their emotions, how to channel their strong feelings in a healthy, productive way. So that's how I kind of work with the court cards and remember them. But yeah, the court cards can be really tricky. Okay, how come there can be such big differences between the meanings of the same cards when it comes to like different authors and publishers? Yeah, and I don't know if anyone has read The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, which is by Arthur Waite, who was the creator of the Rider-Waite Tarot. If you've ever read that book, it's like really crazy because it like is totally different from any other tarot book that I've read. I don't know if anyone's read that book, but it's wild. Um, yeah, so why is this? I think it's just that, I mean, I guess the answer is just that different people have a different take on the tarot. I think that when it comes to the major arcana cards, for the most part, from book to book, it's very similar. But I think when an artist creates their own tarot deck, they want to put their own kind of spin on certain things. So that maybe is why you find a little bit of differences. Um, a good book that I have 2 books actually to recommend on tarot. I know no one asked, but I'm going to volunteer this info anyway. Um, Magical Course in Tarot by Michelle Morgan. This book is amazing. Out of all the tarot books I've read, this continues to be my favorite. There's not a ton of, it's not an info-packed book, which I appreciate. So it's very accessible, it's easy to work with, and I think that her take on the cards is just really spot on and easy to remember. Another good book, which is more info-packed, is Learning the Tarot by Joan Bunning. This is more of like a textbook on tarot, I think. And it's more in depth than the Magical Course in Tarot, but both of these books are really, really good. And I think that they both authors have a good grasp of the tarot. Oh, interesting. So you started with Arthur Waite's book. Yeah, I got it after I'd read a bunch of other tarot books, and I read it and I was like, this is wild. Like this is like not even at all similar to any of my other tarot books. And I don't really know the answer to why that is, to be honest. Like at what point like if that was Arthur Waite's idea of what those tarot cards meant that he created, at what point um, did everyone else's books about tarot diverge so differently from his? I'm sure the answer is out there, but I'm not actually sure what that answer is. Do I recommend that you read the Tarot? I actually haven't read it all. I've kind of read some of it. Do I recommend you read it? Seeing as I haven't read it in in depth in its entirety, I would be a bit of a hypocrite to recommend everyone read it. But if you're interested, yeah, it's an interesting read, that's for sure. Yeah. I don't think it's essential though, in order to be a good tarot reader. Oh, would I agree with this statement? Read cards, not people. Yes, I would agree with that actually. This is something that I get caught up in sometimes when I'm giving a reading for someone. Um, a certain card will come up and I'll think, oh, it can't mean that because this person told me this or whatever. And I'm like, no, just don't think about that. Focus on the cards. Your role is to interpret the cards. Don't try to filter what you're saying based on who you're reading for. So yeah, I think that is very true. Read cards, not people. I think that's a good kind of rule of thumb to have when you're reading. Okay. So Renee Bebe says Pamela Coleman Smith is the queen. Pamela Coleman Smith is actually a really interesting character. I know that there's a well, there's been a few books I think written about her, um, and I feel like I should read them because what I do know about her, I'm like, wow, she was a really interesting woman. She was really kind of ahead of her time, and she's really an interesting character. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions here. What do you is there anything that you really struggle with when it comes to tarot? Whether it's learning tarot or giving readings, like, what is the one thing that you struggle with again and again? Okay, so David asks, "What are your most common questions?" And I'm assuming you mean the questions that I get asked in for professional readings. Also curious if your clients and students are more male or female or if it's equally distributed. So I would say that there's overwhelmingly more women that are interested in tarot than men. My courses always have a few men in them, and I have noticed just in the past couple years more and more men signing up for tarot courses, but it is mostly women. And when it comes to clients for readings, again, it's mostly women with a few men. And I noticed that too, like whenever I took courses with on psychic development or Reiki or anything like that, it was mostly women and a few men. What are the most common questions that I get asked? Um, a lot of people, well, I only do professional readings twice a year. I do them in January, and it's like a New Year's kind of reading, and then I do them in the summertime. And so when I do the readings in January, the most common question that people ask is, what do I need to know about the year coming up, like the next year? Is there anything I need to focus on or prepare for? How can I make this next year a success? That is kind of the most common question I get asked. So it's a very general question. I used to get the question, what is my life's purpose? What am I meant to be doing in this lifetime? I don't get that as much anymore. I do get it sometimes. Um, it's interesting though. I got that question a lot from people when I was struggling with that question myself. So I think that's kind of neat. And I was talking with another reader once, and I was telling her the kinds of questions I get asked all the time. She was like, "That is so weird. I never get those questions." She's like, "I always get questions about money." I was like, "Oh, I almost never get those questions." So, yeah, so it's interesting. Okay, is the more decks we use, the better? Also, should I use clarifiers or oracle cards to clarify? So when I'm reading, I just use one deck to do that reading. I don't really mix decks. I used to do a tarot reading and then at the end I would do one oracle card to kind of seal the reading. I don't really do that anymore. I just do tarot. I like to stick to just one deck when I'm reading. I know some people like to mix decks and all that, and that's fine. You know, do what do what lights you up. Do what you feel called to do, but I don't think I wouldn't say the more decks, the better necessarily. Okay, I'm just scrolling up to see if I missed any questions. Oh, David Van Helsing uh, says that he's read a lot over the years about Kabbalah and the tarot associations. Have you ever found Kabbalah connections useful? No, I haven't. Um, I've read about them in various books, but no, I don't really use it that much in a reading. Oh, okay. So Kitty asks, when did you come out as a tarot reader? Were you apprehensive about being perceived a certain way? So there was really never a time that I came out as a tarot reader, because I was never secretive about my interest in tarot. So right from the start, when I got my first deck and started learning, I told everyone I met. I would always talk about it. So it was never a secret thing that I did behind closed doors. So I never really had that experience of, you know, revealing myself as a tarot reader. Oh goodness. I just noticed my battery is getting low and I didn't bring my charger. I have 19 minutes left. Okay. So, yeah, so I never really had that experience of like revealing myself as a tarot reader. Yeah, so I wish I had an interesting story there, but I don't. Okay, let's see what other people are saying down at the bottom here. Um, okay. Oh, lots of redacted messages. I wonder what they are. Um, okay, so I asked what your big struggles were, what you got stuck on, and Uh, Renee Bebe says Justice and the Hierophant. So I can relate to Justice. That's the one card that I always struggle with. And of course, it always comes up in readings that I do for people, always. The Hierophant was one that I struggled with in the beginning, but I don't anymore. And it's interesting, especially when you can identify two cards that you really get stuck on. And I think that it means something. So I think that when you struggle with a card, whether it's to struggle to remember what it means or to really grasp it and to be able to read it, I think that it does represent something that you're also struggling with within yourself. So for me, I can't stand justice. And ask yourself, you know, what is it about those cards that you dislike or that you get stuck and hung up on? So for me, justice seems cold and distant, and she doesn't seem to have a sense of humor. She just seems very serious and severe. I don't like her. So then I'm asking myself, okay, is there some way that I am like Justice? You know, is there those qualities within me? Does Justice represent an area of my life that I'm struggling with? So I've done some inner work around that and got some interesting insights because of it. Okay. Do I read reversals? No, I don't. No, I don't really recommend learning them. So I know how to read reversals, but I choose not to. And I choose not to because I find the experience of seeing upside down images in a reading just kind of discombobulating, and I don't love it. And I haven't really found using reversals to really add much to my readings. I've played around with it a little bit here and there. It's not my favorite, so I choose not to. Some readers love reading with reversals and they feel like it just brings like a whole nother dimension to their readings. So, you know, I don't think people need to learn reversals right away. I think just learn the upright meanings, and then once you've got that under your belt, try learning about reversals and see if you like it. Oh, okay. I like this question. How to tap into the energy of the seeker. Okay, so I do this before my readings, and these are my distance readings, so the person is not sitting in front of me. Before I do their reading, I hold the deck and I close my eyes and I take a few deep breaths. And then in my head, I set this intention. So I first intend to connect with my heart space because I see that as the seat of my intuition and my soul, my higher self. And then I also set the intention to connect with the heart, soul, and higher self of the person that I'm reading for so that together we can deliver a reading that is both accurate and helpful and exactly what this person needs to know at this time. And then I just wait until I feel tingles. And as soon as I feel like a warm inner glow or kind of tingling in my scalp, then I know that I've made that connection. And then I can confidently carry on the reading, knowing that whatever cards come up are the right cards for that person. So that's how I connect to someone's energy. Oh, and I think I want to give my upcoming tarot course a little bit of a shout out. So I have a course that's coming up. It's called Reading Tarot for Others. It starts next week. It's a 4-week course. The last day to sign up is on Tuesday. So I'm going to put a link in the chat for those of you who might be interested in checking it out. This will be, I think, the 4th time I've run this course, and it's a really fun course, and it's great if you want to get better at reading tarot for other people. Yeah, it's really fun, and if anyone has any questions about that course, I'd be happy to answer. But I did see a question here saying, "Will you teach us how to combine cards?" Um, Yeah, so in my course I do. So in my course, I teach you how to connect cards in a reading and how to kind of weave a narrative, weave a story in there. But one way to combine the cards is to look for similarities. So if you're, say, doing a big spread like the Celtic cross spread or even just a 3-card spread, look at all the cards as a whole and see if you notice any similarities. It could be similarities in color, in number, in body posture of the characters. Sometimes there's symbols that will appear in one card that will also appear in another card. Um, and look for those things first. That's probably the easiest way to combine the cards. Another way to combine cards in a reading is think of your cards as people and think of how they might interact. So for example, let's say you've got 4 of Pentacles. This guy is a real barrel of laughs. And you've got Death, also not a barrel of laughs. So let's say you're doing a reading and you have these 2 guys. If they were at a party together, sitting in a room together, how do you think they would interact? You know? I imagine Death would not be chatty. This is the kind of person who would just sit there not saying much. And 4 of Pentacles, I think, would complain a lot about money. I think he'd be the whiner and Death would just listen, but wouldn't really contribute much to the conversation. So even just doing some practice readings like this, where you lay a few cards out and you think, okay, how would these cards interact? Would Death have advice for the 4 of Pentacles? And start to think of your cards that way. And that helps you connect the cards and instead of just seeing the cards as these individual, standalone, isolated things, you start to kind of bring them together. Okay, so BB asks, do you use believe in manifestations? And if you do, how do you relate it with cards? Can you just clarify what you mean by manifestations? I think you mean like by like manifesting what you want in your life. Is that what you mean? I'm not sure. Just clarify and then I'll answer your question. Laura S asks, when you do readings, do you clarify cards often? And if so, how many do you pull? Okay, so if I'm doing a reading and a particular card doesn't really make a lot of sense, do I pull more cards to clarify? Almost never. I almost never do this because usually when you start pulling more cards, more oftentimes than not, it just kind of adds more confusion to the issue. It doesn't always solve the issue, but sometimes it does. So I do sometimes. I will sometimes if I feel like I need more information about this, but not that often. I find if the card doesn't make sense right away, I leave it and I move on to the next card and then I come back to it. If it still doesn't make sense, I try to go deeper into that card. And I also think that sometimes I shouldn't say sometimes, all the time when I do a reading, there's usually always one card in a reading that doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't often do readings where every single card makes 100% sense to me. There's always one that's a little bit mysterious. So I would say get comfortable with having the odd card not really make sense. That's okay. You don't have to make every single card fit and make sense in a reading. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up pretty quick here. So I'm just gonna answer a couple more questions. And yeah, my my battery on my laptop only has like 10 more minutes. So I'm just gonna answer two more questions. Um, Carol asks, do I find numerology helpful with tarot? Um, I have also felt led to start out with 4 to 5 cards. Is that okay? Yes, so that's totally okay to start out with 4 or 5 cards. I don't know a lot about numerology, so I don't actually incorporate numerology into my readings. Um, New Moon in Cancer, you just signed up for my course. Yay, thank you. Thank you so much. And Maria, I know you're gonna be there. That's awesome. I'm actually really excited for my course. Laura, you're there too. Um, okay, so BB asks, do you believe basically in the law of attraction and do I incorporate that into my readings? I do to a certain extent for sure. I think that we do have the power to manifest things. And I think that it can be really powerful to combine that with working with tarot. So one way I like to do that in my personal life is if there's something I'm trying to manifest or make happen, if there's some kind of goal that I have, I'll choose a tarot card to represent that. And then I will kind of journal about my intentions and how this card represents it. And then sometimes just putting that card, on my nightstand or my desk to kind of remind me of my goal is really, really powerful. So that's how I use it. Okay, and then another question is, um, what does the lovers card mean to you? So I see the lovers card, there's a few different ways to read it. So it really depends, who I'm reading for and what they've asked. But I see the lovers, it it can represent the relationship that we have with ourselves, the quality of that relationship. It can represent coming together with another person, so it can represent like a passionate kind of relationship with someone. But it is kind of this idea of opposites coming together and attracting. Um, so the opposite of like attracts like, sort of opposites attract. So I see it as kind of being about that, but I do see it as ultimately being about what is your relationship to your life? What is your relationship to yourself? What is your relationship to others? Um, is it passionate? Is it alive? Or is it lacking that? Is it authentic? Is it real? Or is it kind of numb? Yeah, so those are all the things that I think about when I read the levers. Okay. Okay, last question here, and then I think my laptop is gonna die any moment. Um, oh, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you, eBug. All right. Yes, thank you, David. I don't think there is any other questions. I think I've answered all of them. Yeah, so I guess I'll give my website a little bit of a plug. So if you enjoyed this Q&A, you might want to check out my website. I'm going to put the link in the chat here. So if you haven't been to my website, check it out. It it's basically a resource for anyone who wants to get good at reading tarot and learn more about tarot. I've got tons of free tarot spreads, tarot exercises, video tutorials, all kinds of stuff like that. So I think you guys would really enjoy it if you're into tarot. And I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here live. It was so awesome to chat with you and answer your questions. I hope you had fun. And bye-bye.